Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Caroline Green. I'm the Director of Research here at the Institute for Ethics in AI at the Faculty of Philosophy, the University of Oxford. And together with my colleagues Katie Thorn from the Digital Care Hub and Daniel Casson from Casson Consulting, I am the co-host of the Oxford collaboration on the responsible use of generative AI in adult social care. We have people from across the care community in this room, people with lived experience of care, frontline care workers, care providers, tech providers, entrepreneurs, academics, government representatives, international guests from Canada, Germany, China, from the United Nations, who are helping us to carry our message and work into the world. I hope you will use the various opportunities throughout the day to get to know each other and connect over what is a shared interest, the responsible use of AI and social care. In the next hour or so, we will give you some background to this day, and I will start off with a short presentation to give you context to the summit. But before I do that, I want to say a really big thank you to so many people across the social care community who in the past year have collaborated, contributed tirelessly to what was a real effort to co-produce a better understanding of what it means to use AI responsibly in social care. Co-production in social care is not only an outcome or even a process. It is a philosophy of how to approach to finding solutions to a particular problem or issue, in which people with lived experience, care workers, and others come together as equals, explore together, listen to each other, and work with each other to find consensus and compromises. So a very special thank you to Kate Chopling from Think Local Act Personal, TLAP, who has been so central to our co-production, and to all the people with lived experience and everyone else. She has been central to the process as such, and to writing up of the documents. So thank you, Kate, and I think you deserve a really big applause right now already. I also want to acknowledge the organizations that have supported this work financially, and many in kind. Like the Josef und Lise Kraft Stiftung Foundation is also represented here today, the Department of Health and Social Care, the Institute for Ethics in AI's Accelerator Fellowship Program, the Digital Care Hub, and many others. So I will now use the next 15 minutes or so to give you a brief, well, I'll try and stay brief anyway. I think there are some signs to tell me when I'm rambling on, of the work of this collaboration. And this presentation, quite obviously, has to start with some key concepts. I myself actually have a human rights background. I was then working in social care research for 4 years or so, and I only started working on ethics of AI around a year and a half ago. I've been trying to wrap my head around the concept of AI and what it actually means. And the one thing that I have found is that even computer scientists don't really know what AI actually really is. And that's been really satisfying for me, that I don't have to give one definition, right? Because there isn't. So when I try and explain to people what AI actually is, I have found the approach by Narayan and Kapoor really helpful. And what they say, so they've got a book called AI Snake Oil, and the way that they explain it is, they say, ask some questions to see whether a tech system may be AI or not. And the first question, they say, you could ask yourself, does the task that the system performs usually require creative effort or training for a human to perform? So if the answer to this question is yes, then a label of AI is probably appropriate. So what we could be thinking of here is one of those generative AI models, and I'll give you a definition of that later, that produces new images that could be labeled as an AI system. Usually people would need some sort of skill to be able to take a photograph or create a new image, right? Another one is, was the system directly specified on code by the developer, or did it indirectly emerge by learning from examples? If it indirectly emerged by learning from examples, the label of AI is probably appropriate. So if you, for example, have a system that can you can give it a scan, a cancer scan, and it can then pinpoint of whether something is a cancer, potentially cancerous or not. That's probably an AI system, and it has learned that from different data that it has been fed. The third one is, does the system make decisions more or less autonomously and possess some degree of flexibility and adaptability to the environment? If the answer is yes, such as self-driving cars, the label of AI is probably appropriate. As such, at the moment, we don't have anything as artificial general intelligence. So that would be, again, there are lots of different definitions of that, but that would be systems that are more and more like humans. But computer scientists are working very hard. There's a race to get AGI out there. But anyway, we don't have it right now. And I personally think it's still a while away. So let's go into one specific type of AI, generative AI, and you'll hear this concept or you'll hear this term quite a lot today because that's one of the subtypes of AI that we've been working with. So actually, I asked ChatGPT, a generative AI system, to create me that slide, to highlight what it does. So what it told me is generative AI refers to a subset of AI that focuses on creating new content from existing data. This technology uses algorithms to generate text, images, music, and so on. Can I see a show of hands? Who of you in this room has used ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, something like that? Oh, great. Okay, I don't really need to explain what it does then. What I really loved about what ChatGPT gave me down here is what it said down here. Generative AI is revolutionizing creative industry by enabling new forms of expression and automated content generation. Now, we could discuss that, but I think that there's something a bit critical to talk about that, but we won't give that here anyway. So what are large language models? Large language models are, again, a subtype of generative AI. And these are the models that underlie systems such as ChatGPT. And I'll be using ChatGPT as an example of large language models quite a bit today. And how do these large language models actually work? In the end, it all starts with data. It started with the whole of the internet, which was basically downloaded. And then in order to train these systems like ChatGPT, all this text was broken into smaller units called tokens. And each of these tokens were assigned a number, right? And then the statistical processing happened. The model uses these numbers to learn patterns and generate text. In the end, what it really is a really powerful word prediction system. And again, this is something I've learned in this line of work in the past year and a half. In order to be able to talk about AI ethics in all sorts of fields, we don't all need to become experts in computer science or in AI. So again, that was really, really good for me to come to terms with that. But yeah, just to go back to these powerful word prediction systems, if we have our phones, we are writing a text message to somebody, we say, oh, I'm coming home late because I am, and then our phone autofills it with going to the pub. That's probably because your phone has learned that often you'll say, I'm coming home late because I'm going to the pub. So it's learned that, and that in a grander scale, that's what large language models are doing for us, right? So even though these systems are amazing, and all of you who've used them will know just how great the text they generate often will be, there are lots and lots of limitations to these models. And it's important to understand these limitations to a certain extent, because that will help us understand what the ethical implications and risks are, right? So first of all, what are some of these limitations? Even though they sound really human-like, they only mimic human language. They are just systems. They cannot contextualize. They do not understand like humans. And this can be, if we don't understand that, that can be problematic when people read something and they think, oh, this is really understanding me. Even though it's really empathetic language, it doesn't really get who you are. It doesn't get in which context you are. And that can be really problematic in many cases. We will have heard probably of the word hallucinations, or some misinformation, non-alignment. Hallucinations are basically just untruths that these systems come up with. And they may sound like they're true, but they're completely made up, right? There may also be texts that sound like a really good answer to a specific problem, but it's not actually aligned with good practice, which is really important in social care. And we are asking, oh, give me a solution to a particular problem. Someone has fallen. How do I help them up? The solution sounds great, but it's not actually aligned with good practice, and there may be safety issues around that. We have an issue with bias in these systems because us as humans, we are biased. that translated into the text, the data that's underlying these language models. And we have these biases now recreated in the generated text that we get from large language models. And that's by racial bias, that's ageism, that's ableism, and so on. And of course, us as humans, we are still also biased. So if we're having these kind of systems generate text and we don't know about bias, there's the chance we will reproduce and reinforce biases. There are some issues around data privacy. Even though we're bound by GDPR laws, data privacy laws, if people put private data into a general purpose model like ChatGPT, there is a chance, first of all, has someone given informed consent for their personal data to be put out there? That's one issue. But there's also a small chance that that data will be reproduced somewhere. There's lots of different issues with data privacy still. And then, of course, there are lots of limitations that are not about the technology as such, but it's about the way that people use them in their lives, in their context, and so on. And again, this is something really important when it comes to social care. So let's briefly bridge that gap between AI and social care. Why does it matter? Why are we here speaking of it? Why are there so many people interested in it? First of all, let's go back to a definition of social care. Again, I would say there's a philosophy behind it. Social care is about supporting people with disabilities, illness, specific needs to live a life as independently as possible, with choice and control over their lives, with their dignity and status as equal human beings and human rights protected. And there are aspects to social care. Many of them are very practical, helping with activities of daily living, emotional support, and so on. But in the end, this is what social care is about. So generative AI is not new, right? But generative AI is revolutionary for us because there's a broad usability. It's really accessible to us all on our phones, on our laptops, whatever we're using. It has accelerated digital innovation because people can take large language models and create new systems. And importantly, it really transforms the way that we live our lives at work, at home, using these systems to support us. So for social care, there are many different use cases here that we'll go into in a minute. So AI definitely has a lot of potential benefits, and I think that we should, and that's how we worked. We came from that positive mindset that let's leverage AI for the future of social care for people who draw on care and support and everyone else in it. But there are also fundamental risks to the fundamental values of care, including human rights, dignity, equality. And these are linked to some of the technical limitations, the societies we live in, the way that people may be using AI and generative AI. So over the year, we've learned so much on how people in care, whether they're living at home, drawing on care and support, whether care professionals, frontline care workers, care providers are already using generative AI and AI more generally in their everyday lives. So what we've heard, we've also done interviews, we've had our various working groups, and some of the examples is that frontline care workers have told us that they're using ChatGPT, but also often specialized system for social care to create care plans, for example. These are very admin heavy. They can take a long time. So people will ask to generate a care plan for a specific person. Also, another use case we've seen quite a lot is to summarize a care visit. So when someone goes to somebody's home and domiciliary care, they will have a system that records everything, and then out of that, they will generate a care plan. Now, we could probably spend the entire day of what might be some of the benefits here and what might be some of the issues with that. Yeah, but what we've heard, some of the major concerns with producing care plans, especially through ChatGPT and so on, is around person-centered care, and how do people, first of all, maybe use private data here, input private data that they shouldn't be, and how good are these care plans in actually making sure that they adequately reflect what it is that people want in their lives. So that's just one example. Another use case we've seen is that people are using these systems to get advice and new ideas. So for example, on medical symptoms that someone who draws on care and support is experiencing, a frontline care worker puts that into these systems. Often that's not actually supposed to be. So ChatGPT shouldn't be used for medical questions, but still people do. And then they get sort of an idea of what the issue might be. And what a specific use case we have heard here is that this has helped the care worker feel empowered to go to their manager, say, look, I've seen this about person X. I'm concerned about this specific issue. Do you think we should check it out, right? So that's a benefit to that frontline care worker who felt very empowered. But of course, that person actually checked it out. There would be a problem if you wouldn't check it out, and if you might take that as advice rather than actually go and see a GP or a medical professional. So these are just some of the examples we've heard. There are a lot more. And AI, generative AI, is being used within a highly regulated sector in which we still have to figure out on what the implications are for what high quality, good quality care along regulations and laws actually mean and what these risks are. So just to briefly go, that takes me to policy and regulation here. In the UK government is embracing AI, right? They have in January 2025, the government has published an AI action plan in which they said we're going to roll out AI across public services. And we already see a lot of that within local authorities in different areas like rubbish removal and parking fines and so on, but also more and more in social care as well. And the UK wants to be a leader in AI innovation. Now, again, we could talk about why the UK didn't sign next to the US the Paris Declaration and the past AI summit, whereas everybody else did. But there's always a bit of a discussion between regulation and innovation in AI and how that works together. And one of the main narratives is that overregulation will lead to less innovation, right? Anyway, so we'll see where the UK government goes there. We do not have one AI law. Of course, there is the EU AI Act. Anyway, let's leave it there. I could ramble on about that. Let's go to the sector itself and social care. At the moment, there's no official government policy on guidance on the use of AI in social care. The Care Quality Commission hasn't published anything. The Department of Health and Social Care hasn't made anything specific here at all. So all of this is happening without any kind of guidance around all of this. Also, I'd briefly want to say that AI systems that are built for medical purposes and that fall under the medical device regulation, they will be subject to specific regulations, but often social care systems do not fall under those regulations. But of course, there's still data protection laws and so on. So it's not like there's no regulation or oversight as such. But there's a huge, huge gap in regulation and guidance. Oh, no, we don't want to see him yet. No, no, no. Okay, so that part of my slides missing. That doesn't matter because I'm now coming on to the Oxford collaboration and how we have come together as a sector in the past year to try and address this issue that there is no official guidance, there's no understanding, well, now there is, on what the responsible use of AI in adult social care actually means. And in February 2024, a group of us met at Reuben College just across the road, and we had a first round table in which we discussed a lot of this. And we said, okay, we need to come together and work on this. And we know that there are also other groups who are working on that. But let's put out a statement there. Let's invite others in. So we published the Oxford Statement on the responsible use of generative AI, and we started working together over the year. And the way that we were set up is that Katie, Daniel, and myself, we hosted this collaboration. We were set up with a steering group of people. We met once a month. So a lot of you who are in this room were actually also part of that steering group that governed the next steps of what we're going to take. We then created working groups of various people. So people with lived experience, frontline care workers, care providers, tech providers, a community group, also many of whom are here today, an evaluation group, and a principals working group. And within these working groups, people could come together and make sense of AI for themselves in their own groups of people. And they decided what would be helpful for them to put out into the world. And many of these products you'll see today. So for example, we had the lived experience group who came together as a group talking about how AI is impacting the lives of people who draw on care and support. And they came up and published their own guidance. We had a care workers roundtable where care workers came together and came up with a statement on the demands and needs of what they have in order to use AI responsibly and safely and well in their work. And then we had our principals working group, Donald McCaskill, who led that, who actually came up with sort of the values, the underlying values of how should we approach the definition of a responsible use of generative AI. Now, it's a real problem that my slides are missing, because I was going to read out the definition. Let me see whether I've got that here. Maybe I'll just put that at the end and actually finish here now with the process. What I want to say about the process too is that this was a real effort to make it a co-produced process. And the way that we went about that was a layered approach. So first of all, you heard about these working groups. We came together in the steering groups where we had a representation from all the different groups coming together. In the working groups, people were able to make their sense of the issue themselves. We then put all the documents on a table and came together again, everybody, to discuss what were some of the consensus points and what were some of the sticky issues, and where did we need to find compromise. And we did that across several months, and yesterday we came together as a group in a workshop to deliberate. And what you will see today is going to be some of the guidance that we came up with. That's a co-production product. You'll have our white paper that summarizes everything I've said, so you can read it again if you want to. And we'll have a call for action, because we are only at the start. We've got so much work to do. And we don't only want to do it here, we want to do it internationally. So I think you've heard enough from me. I'm now going to hand over to Daniel, who's going to hand over to our minister. He couldn't be here today, but at least we've got him.
This now is open for you for comments on what the minister said. We'll be recording those and taking those back and looking for answers and responses to those. But just so we can start, some of the themes that you think about. So while you're thinking about questions or points you want to make about that, he did say that the government is embracing AI in social care for two reasons. He said, to help people. That's why we're here. And to give people time to care. Now, how that's going to enact itself is something for us in this room to put into action. He did mention how digital transformation has reshaped social care, with the 84% of people who can now access digital social care records and who experience greater safety because of digital tech. For you to ask here, what's the department going to do to enhance that, to listen to us? We want you to help the process, to build on what he's saying here. So tech is at the heart of the government's vision. He said to give people, repeating exactly what Caroline said, independence, choice, and control. And then he linked us all to what we all know, the three major shifts, which I'm not going to repeat here, the three major shifts of the government, which we need to bolster, we need to make real. He talked about three specific use cases there. He talked about AI-based falls prevention. He talked about facial recognition, leading to helping people express themselves. And he talked about paperwork enhancement. He talked about proactive analysis. He talked about chatbots and potential with potential for this technology brings responsibility. And that was the start of when we started in February last year, that was the start of this group. Because there is some feeling that when we were talking to people about digital transformation in social care was carried on at a pace, but sometimes didn't look at the responsibility that we were taking on and the unintended consequences, which is something we want to explore. We want to drive ethical and responsible approaches to AI. And it's very important, one of the things that he said there, to elevate care and enhance human elements of care. Now, this is part of the co-production. We feel that this is one of the first times that from the very start of this, of the use of AI in social care, we are really trying to bring co-production to have real teeth. That's why the care workers in the room, the people with lived and living experience in the room are so vital. So this is our chance to make the points to the Minister. So I'd like to start, anyone, any issues with what the Minister said to start with? To think about things he should have emphasised, which maybe he didn't. Is there some more we could say about how the Department for Health and Social Care should be supporting us more? We have one question here. Can you introduce yourself and say your name, please?
Hello, I'm Kate. I've been working with you all, many of you around the co-production for this work, and I suppose I just wanted to bring an observation from all of that work around one of the key themes that I think it's easy when you're the Minister to miss, which is it's all very well to say that you want the introduction of AI to improve people's care and to increase people's time to provide care. But I think if you're a person who has experience of the system, you recognise that very often that's not what the system does. And this is a system where a lot of your experience is about battling and having things taken away. And so, you know, it feels very, very risky when you come from a place where you don't have trust in the system, because that trust has been damaged again and again. And so I think if we want people to feel confident that the introduction of AI is not about taking away, but is about giving, we need to give people a security that, you know, we need to put guardrails and guidelines around this so that we can be sure that it's going to be used in those ways for positive gain, rather than as another way to potentially undermine what people are entitled to.
So people see, thank you very much, Kate. Are people seeing the ways that it could undermine people's care? I've got a couple here. Peter, would you like to? Do you want someone to read off your screen, Peter, or do you want to?
You can see I have communication aid myself most special from every service. They do say they want to help us, but like I have communication aid on my wheelchair, but that wheelchair service, they weren't happy me to have that technology on their electric wheelchair. Forgetting everything is important. Their issue, they don't see us like human.
I'm just going to read out. You can see I have communication aid myself. Most of the issue from every service they do say they want to help us, but like I have communication aid on my wheelchair, but that wheelchair service, they weren't happy me to have the technology.
We need to fight for it. We need to make.
Yes, thank you.
We need to make this technology more common, more openly available. Yeah, this is what we're saying. Yeah, very much, and that feeds on what Kate was saying about, and that builds the trust with you between the people that are supporting you. We are short of time, so I will pass on, Peter. But that's amazing. There was one other person over there. There's one or two people over there.
Hi, my name's Rachel from Autism at Kingwood, and we're already seeing the local authority trying to cut our funding because they say that using fall prevention and sensors means we don't need as many staff. So what we're seeing is, instead of it enabling more time with the people we're caring for, they're using technology as a reason to cut costs in an already really challenging environment where every social care provider, particularly a charity, which is what Autism at Kingwood is, are finding it hard with the NI costs and everything else, and the government, that's what we're finding locally. It's being used as another reason to cut funding.
Sorry, so your name is, sorry?
It's Rachel from Autism at Kingwood.
Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. I agree. It is one of the things where I've seen it in many cases where people who are actually creating value, as you're doing, creating value with greater use of technology, are not being rewarded for that somehow. And that's a big point of mine, is that we need to reward, where value is created, it needs to be rewarded at that point. And I think that's something we need to retrain trust on. So yes, we'll be taking that back. And there's people behind you we can talk about this with as well. We have Casson.
I actually began in computing.
Can you introduce yourself?
My name's Cathy Ashley, and I'm from Stansted Lodge, and we are part of the users of the system. And my beginnings in computing was actually about testing systems. The only way you build trust is to know that your system's going to work and that you keep reviewing it, certainly after a set period. I don't, and certainly from listening to the Minister, I don't feel that there is a sense that these things are being tested. And your previous speaker was giving an illustration of the sorts of, not malicious, but the people who are looking at this as a means of doing things that do not support social care, and the possibility of people hacking into it, the motivation of the people who are actually promoting it, like TikTok is promoted by the Chinese, but they push malicious stuff at the teenagers in the West. But for their own children, it is all about education. And these things actually need to be seen in the round and to be tested, because a lot of our members will not even touch a computer. They can't afford it. They're not interested. They didn't grow up with it. They never used it. And we are very frightened. I wouldn't go online banking either.
I just take, Cathy, thank you very much. It's very eloquently putting on board the inequalities that it can create. And that's also about the trust bit. And also it brings in some of what Rachel was saying about us being punished for actually creating good practices. So yeah, we'll take that on board, definitely, Cathy. Thank you. Kate.
Thank you. I'm Kate Hamblin. I'm a professor at the University of Sheffield in the Centre for Care, and I wanted to reflect on trust as well. So in all the work that my colleagues and myself do, we have to publish our data, we have to publish our code, we publish our, everything is open access, and then we have a minister kind of, giving out various, 84% of people receiving care have benefited from digital social care records. I know I'm going to struggle to find the background to that. And I know that the other use cases there, the focus is on the technology and it often ignores the human element, right? 50% falls prevention. Well, the AI has just told you a fall is going to happen. It's the person who's then taken that data and done something with it. Similarly, the facial recognition pain tool, well, you're still going to be in pain unless someone does something with that information. And I think often the way the evidence is presented in arguments by the minister and others in government focuses far too much on the technology and completely ignores the human that is going to be having to do something with that data. And my concerns are the same as the lady over there, is that this is being used to justify this, the cuts around people, but actually none of this works without people. So those would be my two issues, is kind of the trust and where some of these figures come from, and the way they're being framed is about solely the technology is doing this, when actually it's people using that technology to then make decisions.
I think, coming back to, I think the 84%, by the way, comes from the take-up of digital social care records. So there is, sorry?
Just take up, but
yeah, the 84% can be evidenced. You're right. He did say, though, at some points, I agreed with, obviously, with lots of points he's saying, but he did say at some points that it is there to enhance the human element. And with such a great shortage in the care workforce, I think there is some way of actually not replacing care workers, enhancing the element, and that's very much, but you're right, the trust and the testing, I think, has to be there, because people are putting new tools out there, and more, I do a lot more work with care providers and tech suppliers of saying, okay, how does this improve my model for care? And that's what we've really got to get to. So yeah, definitely take it on board. Hiya.
Vault provider, but also chair of a couple of care associations. I agree with the point about trust. I also agree with the point around the danger of AI being used to cut costs and actually provide less life-enhancing care rather than more. More practically, I think we need to remember the market is made out of 98% of SMEs, and AI is a journey that we need to go through together. So I think we do need to consider how are we going to help providers that are small operators, very, very locally based, that haven't got the depth, the resources to be able to go through that journey. So I didn't hear anything from the minister around funding, support, any sort of plans to get the market and the providers on that journey.
It's interesting. Volt works in Nottinghamshire widely, and one of the issues is I think the department, and I won't quote because you can speak to them later, but I will say there's more of a focus on the standards of technology, and it's the funding issue really needs to be dealt with, but also how it fits into the whole model, because we don't live in a silo. We're not living in a silo here. Environments of care and greater need. So I think that's going to be.
We are in an environment where the basic wage costs are not covered by the fee uplift. So we need to remember that there is a 10% wage increase that is not covered by the local authorities. So we're not in an environment where there is surplus of funding floating around that we can use for innovation, prevention and technology. We're very much at the opposite end of the spectrum. So I think we just need to balance that.
And that's where the reward comes in for actually creating new. Yes, well, thank you very much.
We have space for 2 more questions. We'll be here and then with you over here.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, then you can.
I'll stand up because it's a bit crowded here. Hi, I'm Lee. I'm a carer. And I've got 60 years lived experience of putting my trust in systems that prove untrustworthy. I've got a similar point to Kate, although I don't need to put it as politely and nicely as Kate did. I think essentially the market tells us that the market almost cannot not replace. I mean, let's read that again. What's going to happen is staff are going to be replaced by computer programs. I think there's no question because it comes down to money, doesn't it, really? Sorry.
I would say that, I mean, hopefully there is a shortage of care workers. We have to enhance the people we already have and make it a greater attraction for care workers. But yeah, Lee, it's a good point taken.
Oh, there we go. It's working now. Yeah, I'm Olivia from the Care Workers Charity, and I also have experience being a care worker both in domiciliary and residential settings. I think one of my biggest concerns to come out about conversations surrounding AI and adult social care is that there is often a focus on how to make care cheaper and not better. And that is really, really worrying. And there seems to be an ignoring that care in and of itself is human. I think my question would be, when he said working with you and working together, what is that going to look like? Because I think for so many times there have been talks about working together. And for example, care workers have not been consulted on several things. People with lived experiences have not been consulted on several things. And kind of speaking from a care worker's perspective, there's often a misunderstanding that care workers are only interested in pay or something like that, when actually they're not. They're interested in everything that affects adult social care. So I think one of my questions is, what is working together going to look like, and how can you assure that we will genuinely work together on these issues?
And Olivia, one thing I can say is this is part of that process, and we are trying to give everyone that voice, but you're right, it needs to be taken on to a further level. There are more questions. We're going to have to close at this point, but please do I can see other hands in the room, please do make the points known to us, and we will work. And also, please do approach Alice, Joss and Emma, because they are in listening mode. Volunteered. And that's what we've done so much. So I apologise. We could go on and on with this, but I'd now like to introduce to my colleague Katie to take us to the next stage.
So we've heard from Caroline already today about the different working groups and the products which have been developed. And so I did want to spend some time in this session to reassure that there is guidance which is now being developed. The care workers have released a statement of what they would like. TLAP have also published a statement. And then we've all come together to publish 2 pieces of guidance. And we're really, really excited to get to launch these today. So the first one, and this is sort of just been launched today, is guidance on the use of artificial intelligence in social care. This is a result of a year's worth of effort and many, many people who are in this room today. The guidance is shaped for people across all of the social care systems, so people who use care and support and their carers, care workers, social workers, OTs, social care nurses, commissioners, care providers, and technology suppliers to the social care market. It's being designed to be an I and we statement, following the Making It Real sort of format as well. We will go through this in more detail later on today, but the link is here. And also, as part of our discussions, it's clear that there is more work that needs to be done in this space. We haven't been able to get over everything in a year. And when we started, some of the technology which is now widespread didn't even exist. So we are also publishing a call to action, which is available online now, with next steps that we all hope we can take together. So we will go through this in more detail again later today, but just sort of a taster for people who like to read long documents on their breaks. I will now just quickly pass to Caroline to sum up this morning's session with our definition of responsible use of generative AI.
Yeah. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, and thank you to everyone. And again, also thank you to the Minister for sending this message. I think that it just also showed just how important this topic is to everyone. So earlier, I promised you the definition of the responsible use of generative AI, and AI generally that we've been working with, and that is underlying all of the work that we've been doing. So the responsible use of generative AI, and we put it in brackets because it's really for AI generally in social care, means that the use of AI systems in the care or related to the care of people supports and does not undermine, harm, or unfairly breach fundamental values of care, including human rights, independence, choice and control, dignity, equality, and well-being. And this is the definition we will be working with today. So I now invite you to enjoy a coffee break, and then we'll be back here in this room in half an hour. Thank you.